Hey, everybody, it's Brian Grenadier from the Origins Podcast, and I'm here with Dr. Jim Lewerenz, and he is a longevity specialist. How are you, Jim?
Wonderful. Great. Thank you.
So
Thank you for having me.
it's my pleasure. I'm going to go through your very, very long bio. Talk about a man who has accomplished and does so much. You're a board certified family physician in family practice. You did your residency in family general practice and emergency medicine at Garden City Hospital, Beaumont, and Henry Ford Hospital. You've received a degree of osteopathic medicine at Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri. You're an active staff physician at Beaumont Hospital, Botsford Hospital, St. John. Dr. Lewerenz is an assistant clinical professor at MSU, an active member of the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Restorative Medicine, American Academy of Osteopathic Medicine, American Medical Association, and American College of Osteopathic Physicians. Let me take a breath.
Yeah. Get
which,
a drink of water. Sorry about that.
which means you are busy and do quite a bit. One of the reasons I wanted to interview you is simply because your focus is on longevity, and so many doctors are, in my opinion, focused on, okay, you're hurt, let's see what we can do to fix you. And it would seem to me that a longevity specialist is focused on, here's some areas you're deficient, let's build those up so that the next 10, 20, 30 years you're good. Is that a very broad?
Yeah. Actually, it's a perfect 30,000-foot view.
That's exactly what I wanted to start off with,
Yeah.
because in my business as a yoga teacher, I'm hearing, people come in, oh, I've got a back pain, I bent over and I just bent over. I can't imagine what I must have done to myself. And it wasn't the one bending over, it's the things you've been doing for 6 months before that, with bad posture, bad eating, bad sleep, bad shoes. It could be anything, working its
Correct.
way up your spine. And then that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And I look at my job as preventative medicine for people. Um, and that's what I guess that's what you're doing. And I
Yeah,
wonder
for
if you
sure.
could just expand on that about, what you do, why
Yeah.
you got into this, what drives you.
Yeah. Well, actually, what really brought me to this, ironically, and what you're asking me is really, I had a personal experience. So I was doing ER and family practice medicine and kind of mixing those. And I had a bunch of young kids and married, and I was racing mountain bikes and doing a lot of other sports, and kind of thinking I'm invincible and go. And I'm you could say I'm slightly type A in the sense of overachiever. But I started having some, let's just call health issues, medical issues, nothing major. I was in my 30s. So, and busy practice and doing family practice at the time and a little bit of ER. But what happened is I had a kink in the armor, if you will. But it didn't feel right. And some fatigue and, mood stuff and pain, you mentioned things that didn't make a lot of sense, especially when you're young, and bottom line was I, besides helping myself and trying to figure it out, then I went to a few other physicians, and got some insight into it, friends, colleagues, people I totally respect, very bright and all that. And it was probably my first insight into really understanding that the medical model is broken. And the reason is because months of this and kind of some, lingering suffering things and things that just didn't seem right. I was basically told, by, true visits with physicians that I respect and they respect me. But, I was, did some labs, did some testing, blah, blah, blah. But, basically you're fine, and, you're not 20 anymore, and, you're not Superman.
Which is what everyone wants to hear when they're 30.
Yeah, exactly. And, when you're thriving, when you feel great and you're like working hard and you're loving life and loving others and family and etc., it's like, something's not right. And so long story short, is I was fortunate enough to get passed on. And actually, sadly, I was told like maybe I needed an antidepressant. So an antidepressant for, by the way, fatigue, aches and pains, and maybe apathy, which is like depression, but it's not. My life was great. I was happy. I was, there was nothing wrong.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't, the depression is extreme, but I would say apathy, and long story short is what I eventually found somebody that I was referred to, and this gentleman, which was interesting because he was actually had a Polish background, and he was a family practice doc, and he goes, listen, I don't really practice medicine, what I'm telling you, but I've gone to a few conferences, and what you're telling me just sounds like, you know, I could help you. And he goes, hey, I'm happy to have a cup of coffee with you. So I literally met him, at a coffee shop, and we sat down, and I, just grateful to him because he kind of gave me a little insight into some things that were, I'll say, functional, physiology, but things that, like, they're not quote unquote diseases yet, or, that you can explain.
Mhm.
So he led me to a group, and then that led me to a few other groups that were medical organizations like the American Academy of Anti-Aging, and the Congress that does a lot of World Health, also AAMG. There's a bunch of these, call them longevity, preventative, anti-aging, and so I went to this conference and to help myself. And when I went to this conference, I was like, within an hour, I was blown away because we were talking about real physiology, real textbook medical stuff. And I'm in a room of, say, 1,000 docs and medical practitioners. And it was like, ooh, I know this and I've learned it, but why aren't we doing anything with this? And so it was just a great mind opening. And then, of course, if you do something that helps yourself and you're empowered and passionate in that. So I essentially took it to my practice, and I took it to my family practice at the time, and just started applying some things that I had learned. And then I actually went and did a whole 2-year fellowship. So I did a fellowship in what's called regenerative functional medicine, and through University of South Florida. And so I had my practice and I did all that. But basically, it is a concept, and it's where I got the whole idea of, I practiced on this foundation of a 6-point model. But I basically got this concept and learned a lot of things that were really, I call it where the rubber hits the road, where someone can now see me, or I and I did this for myself, that we improve your health, we improve, our function, but we're also being mindful of being really preventative, you know. So I'm talking obviously very broad right now, but
It's
but
it's
that's
all
that's
no,
kind
it's
of what,
great.
yeah, that's what kind of got me into it. It just got me, and I was truthfully fired up. I mean, this is, I don't know, 18, 20 years ago, but I literally got fired up about it because all of a sudden my practice wasn't just, writing scripts, taking x-rays, or sending them to get an MRI, and yeah, I would say, oh, you need to lose weight, and oh, look at your cholesterol and blah, blah, blah. But I was really making an impact in people's lives. And then it was just like, hey, yeah, this is what I'm doing.
How did it feel to go from the kind of doctoring you were doing, which was standard operating procedure in America, to this brand of doctoring where it sounds like you're really helping people, and you're teaching them how to help themselves almost, which is just not what we do in America.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, I mean, it's so rewarding. So, obviously I'm really big on obviously making a difference, and, really doing something meaningful. I think by the way, I want to say this, I think every physician means well,
Yeah,
whatever they're practicing, and they go in with the best intention, and
sure.
they go in with a lot of knowledge and a lot of background and a lot of science and all that. And all of that is very valid and real.
Yeah.
And thank God, because we do have some of the most advanced, care in the world.
Mhm.
Okay. In fact, we keep people alive a lot longer probably than they should be,
Yeah,
because of our technology nowadays,
right.
But we are 25th in the world in prevention and wellness, the US. Yeah, we don't look at that in that way, you know what I mean? So I do want to say though, like, these physicians and my colleagues out there, it's not a knock about it. It's more of
No.
our, it's more of our approach is a broken model. It's a broken model, I think.
Sure.
And I think the rewarding part is when people can come into your practice, and other practitioners, I have 7 of them, and when they come into our offices and they present something, it could be something as simple as fatigue or a autoimmune disease, or pain or sleep or mood or whatever it is, using this kind of functional, if you will, physiologic approach, it really, really, really impacts them. And that's just how rewarding. I mean, you can, go home and feel really good about what you're doing. And, what could be better? That's what life is, right?
That's
Doing,
phenomenal. I
doing,
mean,
doing good stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and similarly, like, even as a yoga instructor and business owner, there's days where things are hard
Oh yeah.
for, no matter what.
No
And
matter what industry, yeah.
no matter what you do. But at the end of the day, when you're like, look, I helped this many people, or I helped these people in this way, or because of what I've learned, I actually spent time and listened to somebody, and that was more than that they needed than anything else. It's those moments that make it so worthwhile. So it's,
Yeah.
I feel you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So in society today, again, with the sort of a broken model of medicine, and we could probably talk about this for hours, which we don't have time for. So I don't want to go down that rabbit hole necessarily, but if I came to you and said, okay, I'm, average height, average weight, typical American diet, which typically sucks. What are 5 things I can do right now that I could start doing in my life to, knowing what's coming for me down the road when I'm 50, 60, 70, 80, that are typical, specifically probably cancer and all the other major diseases that we see at that age. What are things I can do right now to start, not
Yeah.
prepping, but to prevent or to be as healthy as possible for when this might come?
Right. Yeah. So, there's some real low lying fruit, okay, that you can do. But then I'm going to tell you what's in my opinion, the most important thing. But there's low lying fruit that obviously we should all be doing. And it's going to sound so basic, like you don't need a physician to tell you this, but if you're not moving, and I don't care if you're 20 and these young people these days, that's not me, but that are basically on the couches and in video games and social media and on their phones, and screen time is hours, a day. It's not going anywhere good. So of course you got to move. You can never stop moving. And it's a growth mindset in the sense of, physically, but also mentally. And it's been proven in a concept I think you've heard of before, the blue zones of the world, and there's a book about it. But you got to move. And of course, the younger you are, obviously you should be doing more. And obviously we're all going to slow down as we age. But I mean, when you find a near, I'll call it centenarian, or somebody that lives close to 100 or even 80s in that, the healthy ones. And I have a 102-year-old patient I saw just a couple of weeks ago. I have a couple 100-year-olds here, see her twice a year. That's how, and she still, and I always say this, her name's Pearl. Pearl's the sweetest lady. Her daughter brings her in, who's in her 70s, by the way. and she brings her in. But what's funny is I said, so, hey, how you doing? Are you still, she has a walker, but what does she do? She goes, yep, I still get up and out of my chair. And that's like her exercise 10 times a day. And I count every time I go up and down the hall in the house. And I do that 40 times a day at 102 years old. So it's just, movement is so key.
Pretty good.
And it sounds pretty like, okay, of course, but so many people don't do it. You know what I mean?
And is there, yeah. And so do you have all right, so if you're in your 50s, you should be moving this way. If you're in your 60s, this way. Is there like nothing?
There's
just
here's what the point is. What I mean is there's no script. Okay. Because if you have somebody that's had and I'll call it a long runway of health, meaning they've been doing exercise and moving and working out and playing sports and doing yoga and doing all these things in their, who knows, 20s, 30s, and they've done this, their runway's a lot longer and much more preventative. I hate to say it, but they're going to get a bigger impact
Right.
into their longevity and health. So of course that person can do a lot more as they age if they stay pretty consistent. But even the person like, and I have this, well, I'll tell you a story. My own mom at 82, she's better at 82 than at 72. And we did some things that helped her lose weight, helped her move her body, etc. Well, she still at 82 is swimming 3 days a week. And when the weather is good and or she's in a place like Florida that she can walk, she's walking, going on, mile or two walk or what have you. And she was active but when she was younger in her 30s, but she kind of got into midlife stuff where she was very inactive and gained some significant weight,
Yeah.
But it can be that. But, I also have patients that see me that, are mid to late 60s and even early 70s, and they're lifting weights 3 days a week, and they're, going on long walks, and they will get on a Peloton and they'll go do yoga and, a few days a week. So it's just it sounds so simple, but to say, oh, I need a pill or I need Ozempic, which is a drug for weight loss,
Yeah. Which I hear
or
significantly reduces your bone density. And there's a whole nother problem with that, especially as an aging woman who has osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, and all that. It sounds like it's a real mixed bag.
Well, there's benefits to improving insulin resistance and losing weight. And we can get into that.
That's a whole nother story.
But my point is that, it's just something so simple. And people, even in my practice that are coming here for help, I go, well, how much you exercising or how much you going on, and sometimes we do have to literally start. I have a patient that lost over 150 pounds and I love her to death. She said, this is what she said to me after it was about a year and a half, 2 years into it. And she came in and she was literally, a half her size. And she goes, I lost you. And I go, you lost me? I didn't get it. And she goes, she met my weight. She lost, now I'm more than 150 pounds, but her point was I got rid of you.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how often,
and what did she do? No, I just wanted to.
Okay. Sorry.
What did she do? No. This is all, she was an accountant and worked at home. And all she did was, obviously we guided her in diet and stuff like that, but all she did is she started walking a block a day, and then 2 blocks a day, and then 3 blocks a day. She was over 300 pounds. So my point is, it just depends on where you're at in your spectrum of health. But if there's 2 things I can share, and this has been proven in several studies, but there's 2 things that actually have been proven to be the number 1 and number 2 predictors of mortality. So of death. It's not diabetes. It's not, your genetics. It's not your heart disease. You have high blood pressure. It's none of those. It's actually number 1 is called VO2 max. VO2 max is actually a respiratory test that you can see how essentially you are in cardiovascular shape. Okay. Basically, the better cardiovascular shape, the longer and healthier you're going to live. Okay. Well, what does that take? It takes movement.
Yeah.
The second one, believe it or not, is mass, muscle and bone. Because as we age, we all get what we call sarcopenic. So even if you're doing the right thing, we all get skinnier, lose muscle, lose bone. Obviously, and what you work with wonderfully with people is flexibility and strength and all that too. Obviously flexibility in that matters, but muscle mass and muscle and bone mass really matter as we age, especially as we get into our 70s, 80s, that.
Got it. All right.
Yeah.
So moving every day.
So movement. Yeah. Movement. And then, another simple thing and is just what we put in our mouth. And it sounds so obvious, but so many people want this magic supplement or vitamin or whatever. And you're talking to the supplement king. I make supplement products. I use things here because they have real impact in people's health and can get them well, but you got to eat right.
Yeah.
You got to eat real food.
Yeah. And now, with the way food is in America, it's like food, Michael Pollan's got some good work out there. There's a bunch of people out there who are exposing the food industry for what it is. And if you're eating fast food, you got one foot on the banana peel, one foot in the grave. I mean, it's just, it's not good.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And then, and then another, simple, thing too. And again, these are some of the, again, you asked five kind of, or, few
And if you
actionable
have 10,
things.
that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
five's a little easier to swallow.
Yeah. Right. But, and this, hey, you do this. I mean, you're the expert in this. Okay. Is sweating.
Yeah.
Come into the studio. What do? They sweat. Usually,
A lot.
you know,
Yeah.
exactly. I've been there, and then
Mhm.
I'm dripping.
Yeah. And
And I work out
what's
every
the
day.
benefit of sweating? Like, what does that do for you
Well,
besides? Yeah.
it's just that when you sweat, you're truly detoxifying. You're eliminating, environmental toxins. You're actually getting rid of things that cause, like, what we call endocrine disruptors that are in our foods and are in, the air and pollutants and that. And just so many people don't do things. I even have many patients that, lift weights, and that's great. Don't be wrong. I just told you, keeping mass is so important with aging, but they don't really sweat much. They don't, get on a
No.
bike or a treadmill or do yoga or, do much that they're actually sweating,
Yeah.
and
And probably very little cardio as well.
yeah, exactly. So it's just something so simple that when you sweat, you eliminate, we are the filter.
Mhm.
Technically, it's our liver and our fat, but we are the filter. So the world is a, much more toxic place, and in the fishbowl, we're in the fishbowl. The fishbowl is the same size
Yeah.
with more
Yeah.
people and junk in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't have a
And
real good filtering system anymore.
yeah, exactly. So
All right. So moving what we eat, and then I'm assuming that somebody in your office helps with specific diets for specific needs and so forth and so on, and it's goal setting and whatever.
for
Um,
sure.
Sweating. What's number 4?
Well, probably number four, I would say, and again, thinking of real impactful things, is that seeing a practitioner, whether it's a physician, whether it's a nurse practitioner, a chiropractor, health coach or whatever, because there's no wrong,
Mhm.
but seeing somebody that has, your best interest, to listen first and to guide you and give you some insight objectively, and doing that sooner, like now, is never too early.
Mhm.
Yesterday, is never too early. And the reason is, I get this question asked occasionally, because I do longevity. We're called Longevity Health Institute. Like, some people get a concept that I see older people or people that are just concerned about living long. Well, we have a wellness concept. So of course, everybody wants to live long and thrive and be healthy in their later, decades. But really, we do a lot of functional approaches to health in general and wellness. And we'll see 20-year-olds, we'll see teens, we'll see 30-year-olds. But the sooner you take a approach that you're looking at true metrics, true data points, real science. I believe I am a scientist, a doctor, so it's not just talk. Is real data points that you can track and metrics you can follow, because if you're blessed enough, you're going to age.
Mhm. Right.
You're going to age. You're going to be here and you're going to age.
Right.
And tracking things I find so important. And in my 25 years, like, I'll go back personally. I do this even in my own labs and stuff, but I do this with patients, even that are doing wonderful, where we have solved goals and we're really working on just prevention now. And like, where are you at?
Mhm.
And everybody gets insulin resistant, meaning everybody, if you're here, you're going towards diabetes.
Mhm.
Okay. This has been studied. The minute we're born, we get microvascular changes the minute we're born, meaning we get vascular changes in our bodies from even in childhood. It
Hmm.
doesn't happen when you're just 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay. It's a very slow process. So when you seek wellness, objective, metrics and numbers, labs, opinions about your true health, and I have a approach, a systems approach I could share with you. But when you do that, whether you're good or not, you may get the blessing and get, hey, you're doing great, see you next year. But you're able to really track where you're at and where things are going, so you can really head them off. And one of the biggest concepts that I'll say is just like the runway to avoid a crash, or
Mhm.
if you can see far out, just like the
Right.
Titanic, the Titanic had trouble, right? Because not that it didn't know icebergs weren't there, they didn't have enough foresight or distance to avoid them.
Right.
So if you can see like, whoa, these things are changing or coming sooner than later, you're going to have much better health span and go into your later decades, healthier and thriving. And, because, this may sound a little negative or dark, but dying's easy.
Mm. Well, in a way, again, so many times I've heard somebody say to me, well, I'll stop smoking when I get cancer. I'll stop eating, drinking Mountain Dews and ding dongs when, I get diabetes. And by then the damage is done. And then you're already in trouble. And what you're saying is, all right, we can help you prevent that diagnosis from the serious conversation with your doctor. Let's have it now and prevent all that stuff from happening, or whatever they're going towards. I heard that there's I heard that you do this, and it's sort of a genetic test. There's like 5 or 6 genetic markers, testing for them, and they can kind of give you like a preview of what's not working for you genetically. You can use nutritionals and vitamins and sources to boost that part of your system to then head off other things. You're nodding and you're
100%.
nodding, you're going, yes.
100%. Yeah. So,
Tell me about
well,
that, because that
yeah,
to me is
well,
fascinating.
well, yeah, yeah. So, and this may be a point where we will, you said something that's so key, in that for the individual, it's working or it's not working. And so it may, because we are very individualized, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And I firmly believe this, and we do a personalized approach with every single person. Okay. And, I have this model, the 6-point model, that's kind of, I call it the foundation of your health, and in this deep dive of these 6 points are so key. One of them, what you're bringing up, is genetics. Now, the funny thing is, most people in America have a concept that genetics are everything. The crazy part is that only 14% of disease is expressed genetically.
Hmm.
So meaning you have much bigger chance in your epigenetics, other influences in your lifestyle and in your behaviors and things like this, and genetics, they're huge, huge, huge. When you know them, that you can use them to your advantage, but also they're not a death sentence. They're not the end point. Like I have this gene, because technically, and we see this in the office, where we've discovered a gene or a mutation, and somebody has a disease and they had no idea, okay, but it developed and it caused something, okay, and that was there with them since birth, but the epigenetics influenced it. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yes, one of our points of our 6-point model is genes, genetics. And usually later, once we've solved some problems, get people feeling well, we do a lot of genetic testing. In fact, we actually do a full sequence, all your genetic sequence, so we can look at all these rare diseases and conditions. And they just help us like make sure we head off things if needed. Yeah. We do that. Actually, we do genetic DNA methylation tests too, where we actually test DNA from cancer and cancer cells, their methylation products, and essentially their signals if somebody has in a early stage cancer without a tumor. So it's like so basically, if we were diagnosing and caught them, it'd be stage 0 called, or 1, which is basically, completely curable.
Right.
Which is
and
amazing.
I've heard too, like people with autoimmune issues or sort of asymptom, they've got these weird symptoms and there isn't a specific cause, but they've got this thing, or chronic fatigue, Lyme's, a bunch of these other things that fibromyalgia, where from some of this genetic testing, you can go, all right, well, this is what's deficient, and we can do something about it rather than you
Correct.
seeing, suffering the rest of your life,
Yeah.
which is a
Correct.
very
Yeah.
different kind of medicine than is traditionally practiced. I think it's fascinating personally.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, correct. And that's exactly what you do, and you can do, and we do. And there's many genetic companies that are out there now, and technology's amazing to where it's really, really finite and really can make a big difference. One of the tests that we do, and that's out there, is from a company called True Diagnostic that we do, that actually we test your DNA telomeres. So it's
Mhm.
a little bit like what you're saying, and we can see what we call their biologic age or their true age. And we can also see what is happening in them, genetically, from intrinsic or extrinsic, so epigenetic influences.
Mhm.
And then we can test them yearly. So we'll use things, and there's things, believe it or not, that are scientific, and things that we use that actually protect your DNA so that you can keep on having replication of DNA, and keeping you in your cells and your tissue and that more youthful. Okay. But it's not just about, like, what the concept I always find is interesting is lay people will think that, well, you mean you keep your DNA good, you're just going to look better, or you'll, yeah, like I won't age. Well, what you have to understand is that when you're aging and your DNA is breaking down and it's not able to replicate, you get what we call senescent cells. And senescence actually then leads to essentially bad cellular debris that leads to cancer and precancerous conditions.
Got it.
Okay. And things also that influence your immune system. So you get these bad rogue cells, and then you get unopposed to a weakened immune response, which we see a lot this with viruses. And all of a sudden somebody's developing cancer or a degenerative disease or what have you. But yeah, genetics nowadays are amazing. But I do want to stress this, is that genetics are one of our 6 points in our model. And what you brought up, yeah, we can test what meds work the best, what nutrient deficiencies work the best for you, what diets, all these types of things. Okay. And what is really kind of exciting when someone makes a change, and that can be as simple as using a supplement, or they've lost, hey, we're going to go on a weight loss program and exercise program, or we use some really advanced things that have been shown in science to extend life, like NAD or nicotinamide adenosine diriboside, or even metformin, which is a drug for diabetes. Long story short is we can test that DNA, that age pace, and see that they're actually improving in 1 year. So it's like, we know we're on track. And some people don't respond exactly the same. So if I put everybody on NAD, doesn't mean that they all get younger.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Some people have a more robust response than others. You know what I mean? That's what I mean by we're all individualized. And it's but it's wonderful that we have that ability to do those tests.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it's so much more predictive, where you can say, look, this is the road you're going down. If you make no changes, this is where you're heading. Is that what you want? And you can do it with sort of real fact-based information rather than, well, you kind of look like this, you kind of look like that. I mean, I've known, you know, people who on the outside look very healthy and
Oh
they're a
yeah.
mess inside. And I've known
Oh yeah.
people who are overweight and they
Oh
don't look
yeah.
healthy at all. And their blood pressure's fine, their sugar's fine. It's pretty amazing to see how that goes on.
Yeah. You can't judge a book by its cover, that old
No.
saying, and you really can't. And the only thing is, in something like with weight or something like that, I always say, and I've said this to loved ones and relatives that, like, need to lose some weight, and I just care. So hey, listen, I'm not their doctor, but listen, I love you and I want you here,
Right.
is you don't see big people, in their 80s and 90s often,
No, no.
and if they're in their 70s, they're not moving well, and they
Right.
got probably a list of meds and all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
so even if they're testing when they're young and they're, but they're really overweight, looks good. you still, there's some things that
Yes, yes,
are
especially that
good
age
options.
where your muscle mass is depleted and your bone structures,
Yeah.
your bones are basically thinning, and yeah, supporting all that weight is very, very challenging.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah,
It's
but I mean, you said something that just reminded me of somebody
yeah, yeah.
that literally, not too long ago, pretty young guy, referred from his dad. He's like 35, and so they're in
Mhm.
business together, and father and son, kind of really good guys. And long story short is, usually if somebody's got family history and stuff, we will deep dive into, we always set goals, so we always are focused on why they're here. You're tired, you can't sleep, you can't have sex, or you have low libido, or your mood, like I said, or you got an autoimmune disease or gut stuff. I mean, gosh, everybody's got gut stuff we're dealing with, and diet stuff. But I always, if there's risks, or in a man especially, getting close to 40 or definitely 45 and above, I'll get a CT calcium score, which is just looks at the arteries inside for calcium. It gives us risks assessment for, and this guy was very big. And so, we talked about, we're going to work on his weight and stuff like that. And he's motivated to get healthier in that. And long story short is, I don't know if I want to do that calcium score. I said, you'd be surprised. I said, I don't, I go, and by the way, if I see a tiny bit of calcium, a little bit of early disease, like I was explaining earlier, you're young. We have a long runway.
Mhm.
We can see that iceberg.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So we know what to do and how to operate and how to manage it and how to look ahead. In fact, actually, there's great nutraceuticals and diets in that can actually reverse calcium deposits and inflammation in the arteries and help the endothelium of the artery. Long story short is his labs, he's not even close to insulin resistant or diabetic. And his calcium score was 0. It was perfect. And, but is it going to be like that at 60? Probably not. But at
Right.
30, I think he was like 38 or something like that, mid 30s.
Sure.
But long story short is like, it's scary to some people, but the reality is
Yeah.
information can really help us.
And seeing your practitioner is going to do that. Do you
Yeah.
have a fifth? Do you have a fifth thing to go? Just one more thing I want people to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really, really, really big on mindset and, outlook. And it's not easy for everybody, at all. Because especially stress and hard times and tough times and Michigan weather in the winter,
Yeah. Just
you know,
depressing gray days.
what I mean? But literally, whether it's, doing things like simple as reading positive things or uplifting things, or, having some practices, whether it's meditation or yoga, that you're thinking of beautiful
Mhm.
things and that, but your mind, the most conversations you'll ever have with yourself, ever, or excuse me, in the world is what I meant to say, but are between your ears,
Yeah.
in your head. And so, if you're thinking it and you're overthinking it or you're processing it, I hope to God that it's positive stuff, because positive energy and mood and thoughts, I see it here for 25 years and I've seen it in my life all the time, go to good things and
Yeah.
positive things and health, by the way, and bad, and we get in these, we all have these, times and stresses and days, but
Sure.
trying to really uplift your, and be around people and around community that's uplifting and positive, and, cultivating that, I think is just, it's not brought up enough or not given enough validity, but I see it actually in a medical practice, how the difference can be.
Yeah, one of the things about the blue zones was community. Is that one of these, besides the foods they ate, the exercise they got, the geography they lived in, and the minerals in the water, and all these other, the Mediterranean diet and olive oil and whatever,
Yeah.
it was community. Community was the
Yeah.
one constant that no matter where they lived in the world, they had that thing. And and I feel like, when we are now more isolated as a result of at home working, not having to go in the office, post COVID work life situation, where we're more isolated.
Yeah.
One, I feel like that's a big detriment. Two, I know this, like if I'm at home and I'm working all day long on my computer and doing whatever, I eat more. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, I have an apple, an orange. Oh,
right.
there's some leftover chocolate.
Yeah,
Well, I have to have some of that, and it's like
right.
nonstop. I would imagine that in the next, from 2021 to 2020 till the end of the century, we're going to see a lot of just a big downslide. I think in mental health, I think in physical health.
Right.
Even though you can exercise at home now more than you ever could with,
Right.
online this and online that. But you don't have the community. It- the community gets you out of your house typically. And I don't think an online community, although it may be supportive, there isn't that interaction. There isn't that
Right. Yeah,
feel,
for
I
sure.
can, even the sound of our voice through this, um, my understanding is it's only getting about 70%. You don't get the
Yeah,
full range of emotion and intonation and expression, and certainly not
yeah,
by texting at all.
yeah, for sure.
And I
When
think
you
that
can't, and it
we're
sounds
missing it.
silly, but you can't touch them. I mean, you can't, whether it's a shake a hand or a hug,
Mhm.
or whatever. I mean, it's, and there's a place obviously in it. There's
Yeah.
some connection, but like you said, it's not. We need community. We need to cultivate that, and always, and in every age, because as you get older, usually your pod gets smaller, unfortunately, unless you're intentional about that.
Yeah.
And or fortunate enough, about that,
Hmm.
but it's so important, and in this, by the way, in this concept, or in this, thing, and it's, by the way, it's one of my 6 points, one of my health wheels, if you will, that we work on, is the mind body connection, and the stress effects of that. But with aging, and you don't have to, by the way, be, when I say aging, you don't have to be 70, 80 aging. I mean, 50,
Mhm.
60. You can never retire.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what I mean by that is, of course, you can retire from a job, and you can have, if you're blessed enough to have the financial,
Mhm.
wherewith and bandwidth to, like, you're good. But everybody, women too, by the way, we all have to have purpose. Meaning, it's not just, meaning if a woman is somewhat of a house engineer, or they've taken care of the kids or their husband and done that kind of thing,
Right.
is, as that trickles away because of life and kids get bigger and all that, there needs to be purpose. Okay. And I will tell you, and this is, like you said, actionable things, 5 of them, maybe this is fifth or sixth. I lost count, but but is just, it's part of that community thing.
Mhm.
You got a purpose. You're doing something, even if it's only 3 days a week or what have you. You're in a community, whether it's the business you're doing or your passion that you got into, or that kind of thing. And especially for a man, because we're hunter gatherers, it's so important. I mean, the prefrontal cortex for a man needs this, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
If I don't
you
have
know,
like I do my job and I run the studio and I teach, but what if I don't have a goal, like I'm going on a backpacking trip, I'm going hiking. One of the things that I love that makes me feel manly, for lack of a better term, I feel like I'm just working my ass off for nothing. And I
yeah,
I don't like that feeling.
right.
I end up burning out faster. I don't feel motivated.
Mhm.
But an interesting story is I have an uncle who I may have told you the story privately, but when he was 70, he decided he wanted to create a camp for kids with cancer. He was involved early on in the Ronald McDonald houses years ago,
Nice.
and in the construction and building of them. He was in the building business right after World War II. And so at 70, he says, I'm going to do this thing. And he put a board of directors together. He had land in Montana. He had a 10,000 acre ranch, which is gorgeous. And he
Yeah. Wow.
dedicated like 100 acres or 90 acres for the camp. And right in the hillside, it's gorgeous. And so at the age of 80, kids started coming. He died at 90, just fell asleep one night, didn't wake up, next to his wife at
Yeah.
camp, you know,
Yeah.
eh, like I'll sign up for that any day of the
For
week. But
sure.
people go, oh, I'm too
Absolutely.
old for whatever. No, you're not.
No,
No, you're not. I
no,
mean,
no, no,
that
no,
gave him
no,
a
no.
purpose. It
Yeah.
really,
No, no,
really
no.
did.
Yeah. When I have a patient, and I've had just in the last year, handful of them that have been like, yeah, I sold my company, and they were fortunate enough, to retire. Or, yeah, I think I'm going to take a retirement out of this business or whatever. I literally, because usually I've known them for a while, they're sharing things in the room with me, and we're always, having some banter just about life a bit. And they go, And I'm like, the first thing, I think they're shocked sometimes. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean you're retiring? Well, we got to have a talk.
Yeah.
You
Well, how
know?
many people do you know who at 65 retire and they're dead by 68?
Yeah.
The
Uh-huh.
majority of them,
Yeah. Mhm.
you know,
Absolutely. Yep.
and
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was always from health problems. It was just lack of
Well,
motivation, lack of,
yeah, I think I think there's a lot to be said, about that intention and about the purpose. And again, I think for a man, especially in how our brains operate,
yeah,
I think kind of you can say this somewhat, even in with women, but in a different way, because women, I believe, and I think it's been proven, they're nurturers.
mm,
And that means a lot to them. By the way, it doesn't mean they aren't driven and run a business and are,
right. We're not being
entrepreneurs.
ageist, sexist, or
No, no, no,
genderist,
no,
or
no.
yeah,
No,
no,
but
listen,
it's like, but really what fills them and is meaningful to them, okay?
yeah,
And is really like is nurturing and loving and caring for their children or their pet or their husband or their what have you. And and again, some of these things fall out as we age, meaning the children move away or grow up, and that kind of thing. And us husbands get like a lot of barnacles on us and we're grumpy and old. No, you know, but the point is that, them having, again, community, but also like something that's nurturing and they're putting into something.
right. Well, they're
And
still fine. They're still fulfilling their purpose. So
correct.
if I'm not out there, hunting, killing the beast, bringing it back to to support my family, well, what am I doing? I feel like I've got nothing. If my wife says to me, I'm not feeling connected to you, she feels like she has nothing,
Right.
even though we both
Yeah.
have a lot in our lives. And
Right.
it is the Mars Venus whole thing, and how we're just wired differently. I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why
Absolutely.
women live longer too. I mean, they can still create purpose without it being a money earning endeavor or a
Yes.
status earning endeavor,
Mhm.
because it's more nurturing. Again, in general,
Yeah.
yet for me, for like, I'm terrified of the day I wake up and go, I don't have a job.
Yeah. Right.
That's my biggest nightmare. I have these nightmares reoccurring. I'll wake up, I wake up in the morning in the dream, and I'm like, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? And I wake up sweating in a panic. I go, okay, I have a job. I have a job. I'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how
Well,
attached. That's just how
yeah.
attached,
Yeah.
we tend to be to these things.
Well, we do, and actually, I think what's as you age and stuff, and you kind of develop your call it your true self, or you get to know your true self. It can be a job, and it can be like just some hobby or something, but
Yeah.
you just some drive. I mean, some
Mhm.
thing that's making you get excited still. And do and go and be actionable. Because when people lose that, often what happens is they start to slowly lose that community too,
Yeah.
which we were talking about. And,
Sure.
and we're worse at it. Men, for whatever reason, there's a lot of
Oh,
reasons.
we're
Women
terrible.
connect more and and we isolate more and are stoic. And, like I said, I call it the we grow barnacles and get grumpy.
Yeah. You're right
But I
on.
also, when that happens, I also, which is part of my 6 point bottle, I always say, get your hormones tested.
There you go. Now, I used to have a ski group that we would go every year to go skiing, and there were most of them were usually older, but one or two of them were my age, and it was like 8 or 10 of us that would go a different place out west every year. And for, I think, 10 years, 12 years, we went someplace skiing. And I can't tell you how much I miss those trips. The group
Yeah,
broke apart and we never
yeah,
reformed a new one. Just to be together and hang out with the guys, and it was I miss that dearly. Uh,
right.
Interestingly, though, I'm kind of an introvert, even though my job is very extroverted. Like for that hour or two I'm in the class, I'm really extroverted. And then I got to go home and hide in a cave for a little while until I can
Yeah,
go back out. But I
yeah,
do
yeah,
miss that sense of
yeah.
bonding,
Oh, yeah,
that thing.
yeah. Well, we all have a cross to bear. I mean, meaning internally, like where we're like, okay, hey, hey, recognizing that
Yeah.
and knowing that, so that as you age, you develop and you maintain a community is some form of that is so important, because a lot of people won't have that reflection. They
Right.
won't know their true self in that way. And they're,
Yeah.
what I mean? So, absolutely,
It's awesome.
but
It's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we're closing in on an hour. Is there any last minute things you want to put out there? Is there anything else you want to say? If nothing for health and so forth, then I'd love to know, how do people find you?
Yeah.
If they like what they heard today, they want you to be their doctor. How does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one last closing thing
Sure.
before I put a shameless plug is
Not shameless. I mean, the number of people you can help this way,
yeah,
it's worth my while every second of it.
yeah. Well, thank you. But because I touched upon it and it's so key. And I think when it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have said a little bit more about this, but this is so key, is hormones. So it's one of our 6 points on our model. People always think weird about hormones. They hear that word. They think of just sex hormones, or they just think of like, oh, hormones are bad. They cause cancer, which is a big fallacy. And like thinking back from like the 60s and 70s. And when we say hormones, by the way, I mean, we're talking everything from insulin to testosterone to estrogen to thyroid to their adrenal hormones to growth hormone. I mean, there's tons of hormones. Okay. We have over 200 hormones in our body. Okay. Pregnenolone. I could go on and on. Melatonin's a hormone. People don't even realize that. Long story short is you can easily evaluate your hormones. And whether you're 30, 40, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in menopause, because hormones are the signalers of every cell. So, I said you come in and we always have goals. Hey, and no one comes in and I go, I'm going to make you young. I
Right.
always say, I mean, that's not the thing. Oh, what do you got? Okay, don't worry, I'm going to make you young. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work
Right.
that way. Okay. What we do is like, what are you here for? I mean, no different. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, my back hurts. Oh, my whatever. Okay. I don't care if you're 30 or you're 60. You need your hormones tested, because they're signalers to every cell and they're so strong. And every hormone has a receptor for another hormone on it, meaning they all are very intricate. So when one's off, another can be, an issue. And if you don't appreciate that and you don't get a reflection on that, or at least have some awareness of it, man, you can definitely age and be miserable and have a lot of symptomology. And why I'm kind of pressing this is it so often gets overlooked, and not to
I
go off
mean,
in the weeds here, but
yeah.
I literally this week had a poor guy, and he was 40 years old. 4 months ago, lost his 37-year-old wife to cancer, and he was a new patient. So I'm
Ouch.
just literally
Yeah.
had to call him the other day about some labs to say, hey man, we're going to get you on this and get you on the right road. And this is a whole nother topic, but he had a testosterone like he was 90, and he'd been seeing somebody that didn't even look at his hormones ever. And I was like, no wonder you're miserable, depressed, and in pain. His wife, of course, died, but he has been, obviously before all that, he had been having medical and health issues for 4 years, and no one even looked. We don't know if you don't look, And so
Yeah.
like, oh, your back hurts. Oh, you're depressed. Oh, you got aches. Oh, you're fatigued. Oh, your mood's bad. Well, you got to look, and they're huge. So, that's just, I wanted to share that because it's something that gets overlooked all the time. By the way, in women and in men, even men.
Yeah. I think that at 59, I probably see the doctor much more regularly than I ever have, but I don't recall ever having my hormones tested or have
No,
it even be suggested,
because you got 5 minutes and he's got 50 other people waiting. And by the way, your cholesterol looks good and your sugar's fine. And by the way, he looked up and down at you and your blood pressure is fine. Hey, you look pretty good. Oh, you got a yoga studio. Brian, I'll see you next year.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
You get the
much.
blessing, I call it. You get that like, oh, you're fine.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
How do people find you? What's your best
Well,
ways of being reached?
yeah. So, well, our practice is named Longevity Health Institute. We're in Bingham Farms on Telegraph, just south of Bloomfield, and we're in Rochester Hills. You can look us up, obviously, Longevity Health Institute Inc.com. And I have 7 practitioners, another, PAs, nurse practitioners, another doctor with me. We want to help everybody. So we have a few different models. I do subscription-based like concierge stuff, and we have many options here. We do take insurance, but we also have models where when people need more or want more, they have more time and more access, and literally down to like, I have patients and, some on this wall behind me that,
Mhm.
have my cell phone and, but I mean, we're here to help everybody and to do
Mhm.
this deep dive into this 6-point model. And my practitioners, by the way, are highly trained, been with me for years. And I'm blessed with them because they're amazing and do good stuff and have great hearts. And ironically, a lot of them are like ICU hospital run, and cardiology. My doctor with me was working with a cardiologist for years, and they are seeing they saw the light. Like, hey, they did some training and saw the light, and I was fortunate enough to cross paths with them and go like, hey, there's a paradigm shift here in medicine, and I want to be part of it.
Mhm. That's phenomenal. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. All right. Amazing. Well, we'll cut it off now. It's been about an hour. Thank you for your time. I know it's limited, and hopefully we can do one of these again and get more into the weeds on some other topics that maybe are worth getting into the weeds on.
Yeah. Amen. Anything.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it.
Pleasure.
Take
Be
good
well.
care. All right.
Take care.
Bye.